might be joining us as we go, but we got, there's a lot of different things that I'd like to share today, including some practices. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I don't know that we have a poll. I'm not sure, Rick, if I had mentioned this, but just if you are willing to throw this in the chat, maybe if you're participating today for personal or professional use. I know some of you have already mentioned for yourself and for others. If you just want to throw that in the chat, that would be wonderful. Rick Myers, our webinar producer today, he is awesome, and I so appreciate all that he does behind the scenes. If you run into any snags or issues, feel free to either give Rick a call or send him an email, and Rick can maybe put his info in the chat as well, just so you have that in case you have any issues.
Yeah, the email will work best, or the chat.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yes. And of course the chat. Yeah. All right. So let's get started with a practice. And I really like to start my sessions with practices for several reasons. One, I think it's so important that we move out of just like learning about things up here and move into a more full, like experiential piece of understanding what it is that we're learning. And it also helps to ground us in the space, so both individually and collectively. So this is a practice that I learned back in November, and I've been doing it fairly regularly since then, and I find it really helpful. It's called the 3 sync process. I learned it from Thomas Hubel, who does a lot of work around understanding and healing individual, collective, and ancestral trauma. So if you haven't heard of Thomas Hubel, I encourage you to look him up. You'll find some really great resources and information there. But so I'll walk us through the meditation, and I just invite you to get yourself into a comfortable position, whatever that looks like or feels like for you. And if closing your eyes feels good and it's safe for you to do so, as long as you're not driving, you can close your eyes. Otherwise, you can have your eyes open and just a soft gaze down to minimize any visual distraction. And as we start this meditation, I invite you to just take a moment and take a snapshot, sort of a little selfie of where are you in this moment. So how do you feel in your body, your emotions, your thoughts? So just taking a little snapshot and noticing, where are you in this moment as we start this webinar? And now I'll invite you to just explore the body and begin to notice ways that a sense of aliveness shows up in the body. And this sense of aliveness can be a sense of vibration or tingling, movement or flowing. These places in the body that we can feel, that we can sense, that we can access, and where we feel a sense of aliveness. And so just scanning down through the body, noticing where these places are in your body this afternoon. And you might just notice it in a pinky toe, or maybe in the chest area, or on the nose. There's no right or wrong. There's no expectation even that you feel this, but just sensing into where you might feel aliveness in the body. And now taking a slightly deeper breath, maybe extending the exhale just a little bit as you bring your attention to ways that your body is feeling stress. So tuning into sensations like tension, constriction and tightness, discomfort or pain. And seeing if you can notice these places in the body without trying to change them, just simply noticing where the body is experiencing stress in this moment. Taking another slightly deeper breath. Extending the exhale a little bit. As you began to notice those places in the body where maybe you don't feel so much connection. Maybe there's a numbness or even an absencing, where you sort of know it's there, but you can't really feel it. And again, trying to just gently set aside any judgment you might have about that, and rather bringing in curiosity and just exploring those places in the body where you don't feel much connection, where there aren't sensations. Taking another nice big inhale, extending the exhale as you bring your focus and awareness to emotions. Becoming aware of what emotions are present for you in this moment. And maybe it's just one big strong emotion, or maybe it's several emotions that are coming in and out. And so just sensing into that, what emotions are present with you as we start. And maybe as you are able to identify emotions that are present for you, maybe becoming aware of where in the body do you feel those emotions and what sensations are connected to those emotions. Taking another slightly deeper inhale, extending the exhale as you bring your focus and awareness to the mind, to thought, and begin to become aware of thoughts as they arise. And maybe noticing if your thoughts are coming in and out in a nice, slow, orderly manner, or maybe your thoughts feel a bit like popcorn coming in and out very quickly. And again, trying to set aside any judgments and just simply becoming aware of where the mind is at in this moment, how quickly it's moving. And maybe noticing the quality of the thoughts. Maybe you began to notice how those thoughts perhaps impact an emotion or create an emotion. And maybe you can follow that emotion through to notice if there's a sensation in the body connected to that emotion. And so again, noticing mind, noticing thought, and also generating some awareness about how these thoughts are connected to emotions, are connected to sensations of the body. And then taking another longer inhale, deeper inhale, extending the exhale. As you begin to sense into what part of you is aware. So what part of you is aware of the sensations in the body? What part of you is aware of the emotions in your emotional state? And what part of you is aware of your thoughts? And so not thinking about this part of who you are, but rather sensing into this part of who you are, feeling into what part of you is aware. And then we'll close with a nice big grounding breath together, inhaling deeply in through the nose, exhaling slowly out through the mouth. And then just taking a moment to pause and sort of check in, noticing your sense of connection to body, to emotions, to thought, and your sense of connection to others around you as well. So I realized I did not introduce myself. So my name is Susan Bolio, and I am an extension educator with the University of Minnesota Extension. I'm in the area of family development and family resilience. And I do a lot of work around understanding the connections between trauma and stress and epigenetics and our physical, mental, emotional well-being today, and then practicing tools and strategies that can help us to rebalance, realign, and find that greater sense of well-being and balance in the chaos. And our lives really, especially over the last couple of years, have been incredibly chaotic. And we'll talk a little bit more later about, some of the impacts of that. So we're going to start by looking at or sort of digging into the notion that we're more than our physical bodies. We are physical beings. We have physical bodies, but there's also a mental, emotional, and spiritual aspect to who we are. We're going to look at chaos and stress and how that impacts the mind and the body. We're going to talk a little bit about balance and the importance of balance, and how finding this balance can help us to navigate sort of the chaos that we find externally in our lives, and sometimes even internally, often in our lives. And then different practices that we'll be doing throughout. We just did the 3 sync process. We'll do a shaking meditation and a body scan, a general awareness meditation, and a heart-centered meditation. And as we'll talk about each of these meditations sort of focus in a different part or area of the mind, the body, the spirit, etc. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the body and just some things that we really know impact our physical well-being. And again, I want us to, as we're going through our time together, especially this first part, really starting to understand the interconnections between the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions. And so we'll start by talking about foods and how foods impact our mood. So there's some really interesting research and science that's coming out lately on understanding the human microbiome. So all of the bacteria and the microbes, and basically the little mini cities and worlds that live inside of our body that are not human DNA, that have their own DNA, but are beings that reside inside of our body. And depending on what we eat, can impact our health and well-being. So there are certain bacteria and microbes in our gut that help us to be able to have energy, help us to be able to produce neurotransmitters like serotonin. And serotonin actually is like a mood stabilizing neurotransmitter. And between 90 and 95% of this neurotransmitter is created in our GI tract. So even though it's a neurotransmitter, I often think of neuro as brain. Most of this neurotransmitter is produced in our GI tract. So the foods that we eat impact the production of serotonin. In addition, the medications that we take. So for example, antibiotics sort of don't differentiate between bacteria, good or bad bacteria. And we really rely on good bacteria and a balanced microbiome to be able to be healthy and well. But when we take something like an antibiotic, it literally can just wipe out all of the bacteria, including the good bacteria in our bodies, which can cause a lot of issues and challenges. And so if you are on medications that impact your microbiome, or you're on antibiotics or something like that, you might want to increase the types of foods that you eat related to, say, cauliflower, broccoli, fermented foods, foods with probiotics, prebiotics, things like that, versus sugars. And so one of the things that I learned in this is that some of the bacteria or microbes that are in our microbiome is it's called Candida. And so this Candida uses sugar, it eats sugar. And the interesting thing about it is that, you know, our American diet is very tipped towards sugars, refined carbohydrates, high sugar, things like that. And so that feeds the Candida. And then the more it feeds the Candida, the more the Candida grows, the more the Candida grows, the more the Candida sends the message to the brain that, hey, we need more sugar down here. And so we get, you know, we get cravings for sugar, and then it becomes this really vicious cycle. So becoming more aware of the foods that we eat and how it impacts our microbiome and therefore our moods is really important. Another thing that I think is important is understanding the importance of moving our body. And the benefits go well beyond just physical health and well-being, or like size and scale and things like that. But actually, when we move our body, it helps our heart and our cardiovascular system. So when we're sitting for long periods of time, because there isn't a pump at the bottom of our feet to pump blood back up to our hearts, sitting for long periods of time actually can cause some issues and problems with legs and with veins and things like that. And so getting up, moving your body, you know, every hour or something like that is really important to get that blood that is down in the feet and the legs back up to the heart, so that it can go get oxygenated and go through the rest of the body. And then exercise and moving the body is also incredibly beneficial for the brain. If you have a really long day, and I actually did this right before the presentation, and we're going to do it again during the presentation, but moving your body sort of vigorously for even a couple minutes can help to reset the brain. When your brain feels tired, you feel lethargic, maybe you're having a hard time putting thoughts together, you're just feeling like, I do that sometimes in really long days. And so just standing up and moving the body, going for a brisk walk for a couple minutes, or just shaking the body can be really helpful to reset the brain. And then of course, catching more Z's, getting more sleep is really critical. And some of the things that I've learned about the importance of sleep is that sleep is really the time when our brain is able to process all of the things that happen that day. It's the time when our brain sort of clears out the gunk in our brain. Our brain doesn't have those sort of natural ways in the lymph system to be able to get all of that out of there. And so sleeping is the time that happens, which is why you might notice when you don't get enough sleep, you might feel a lot of brain fog. It might be hard to like think of words or put thoughts together or be real coherent and concise. And that could be just because you got a lot of sort of gunk buildup in the brain. And so getting enough sleep is really, really critical for the body, but also for the brain and our mood. I tell my kids that, right? Like, you know, when mommy gets enough sleep, then I have more patience, right? We all know that when we're sleep deprived, it's really hard to be patient and to regulate our moods. So it's also really important for that. So we are going to move into the first meditation, and this one you can do it standing or you can do it sitting down, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to do it standing up just because I need a little bit more movement here. So shaking is a really great way to start to loosen up energy where there's blocks or there's tension, there's tightness in the body. And so shaking meditations are something that, or shaking is something that dogs do, that lots of different animals do, just to release sort of that extra energy. And so I am going to, let's see, I'm wondering, you may or may not be able to hear this really well. And I'm wondering if, Rick, if you can maybe tell me if this will work. If it doesn't, we can either do it without, or I can stop sharing my screen and then share it on my computer, but I'd rather not take the time to do all that. So I'm just going to try to play a little bit of music that's going to help us to move our bodies a little bit. And I would invite you to really pay attention to your body. So if you have places in your body where you have injuries or something like that, really listen to your body. Don't shake too hard, too much in those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and see if you can hear it.
I can hear it.
You can hear it? Okay. So we don't need to hear it too much, but just sort of get a sense. And if you are, whether you're sitting or you're standing, just start to bring that shaking up through your legs. And then eventually you want your whole body moving and shaking, but you really, again, want to listen to your body, your hands and your arms, lots of work, shoulders and neck. Remembering to breathe deeply. Just knowing that the harder you shake, the more energy blocks are going to be released. The more tension you can release. Go for about 30 more seconds. Okay, and so now I just invite you to just pause and just notice your body, notice what's happening. And then if you were standing, you can go ahead and have a seat again. And we're just going to move into a body scan. And just sort of noticing, again, sensations. So we're going to start at the top of the head, scanning down the back of the head, just becoming aware of any sensations that might be present. Moving around to the face, coming down through the forehead, noticing sensations in and around the eyes. Becoming aware of sensations in and around the nose and the ears, the cheeks. Bringing your awareness down to the mouth, becoming aware of sensations in and around the mouth. Moving down to the chin and the jaw. Becoming aware of what's present in the neck and in the throat. And then bringing your awareness down into the shoulders, where the neck connects to the shoulders, and then following the shoulders down, out through to the arms. And then streaming your awareness down into the arms, becoming aware of sensations in the upper arms, the biceps and triceps, the elbows. Noticing sensations in the forearms and in the wrists. And then moving your awareness into the hands, becoming aware of sensations on the back of the hands, the palms of the hands, and all the way out through the fingertips. Bringing your awareness back to the shoulders and slowly scanning down the back, noticing sensations along the top of the spinal cord, out by the shoulder blades. Noticing sensations in the middle of the back. and sensations in the lower back. Bringing your awareness around to the front of the body, becoming aware of sensations in the chest. And maybe really noticing the sensations of breathing, how the chest rises and falls as the oxygen and air comes in and out of the body. Maybe noticing, maybe feeling your heart beating. Bringing your awareness now down into the abdomen and the lower abdomen. Moving your awareness into the hips, pelvis, and buttocks. Really noticing the sensations of sitting. What parts of your body are touching the chair or whatever you're sitting in? Moving your awareness now down into the legs. Becoming aware of sensations in the thighs and hamstrings. Becoming aware of what's present in the knees. Moving your awareness down into the lower legs, the calves and the shins, the ankles, and then moving your awareness into the feet, becoming aware of sensations on the bottom of the feet, on the top of the feet, and all the way out through the toes. And with our awareness, we have the ability to zoom in, like we just did on different body parts, or we can zoom out. So let's do that for a few moments, zooming your awareness out and taking in all of the sensations happening across the body in this moment. All of the things that are happening across the body, feeling sensations in different places. Just taking that all in. And then let's bring our focus, if it feels comfortable, to the breath for just a moment or two. Noticing in this moment, how is the body breathing itself? How quickly or slowly are your respirations? How deep is your breathing? And again, we're not trying to change anything, we're just noticing. This gives us some insight into where we are in our nervous system in this moment. So just connecting in with that, with our breath. We'll take a nice big inhale in through the nose. Long exhale out through the mouth. And if you had your eyes closed, you can go ahead and open your eyes, bringing yourself back into the space. And so we're gonna shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about the mind and the brain. And I could talk hours about this. I find it incredibly fascinating, the neuroscience and all the things that they're learning about the brain and how it works and how it connects and wires and everything. And one of the things that I've learned in the last couple of years that I found fascinating is that this comes from Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's a neuroscientist. And so she talks about how the brain's main job actually is to maintain a body budget. to help us know like when we have enough energy, when we need more, anticipating it before we actually need it. So, sending out signals that we're hungry before we actually don't have any energy. If we waited till it was dire, then, that doesn't really give us time to go get something to eat. And same thing with drinking and sleeping and all of these things. So, the brain is helping to maintain a body budget. And she also talks about how our life is, she says neuroscientists call it a carefully controlled hallucination. So our brain is using past experiences to predict what it thinks is happening in this current situation. So your brain is thinking, what is this most like? And if we don't have something that it's most like, then our brain is likely to sort of come out of autopilot and move into actually this sort of like experiencing to help us take in this new information so that it has sort of a new thing that it can run future experiences by in the future. Another sort of interesting little tidbit about the brain is that even though it's a very small organ and it doesn't weigh very much, it actually uses 20% of the body's energy. And that's at rest when we are not thinking. So when we're thinking and we're doing really difficult mental tasks, our brain uses a lot more energy than that. So I just thought that was interesting. Like our brain is working behind the scenes all the time and it's using a lot of energy. Another really interesting thing is that, and this is a neuroscientist, his name is Dr. David Eagleman. And at the end, I'll share like some resources and references, and then also a PDF of all of this will be sent out. So you have this as well. But Dr. David Eagleman talks about, there's this term called neuroplasticity, and that's to indicate that like our brain is constantly changing and evolving. New experiences can wire in new connections. But Dr. Eagleman says it goes beyond plasticity, because when something's plastic, as soon as you pour the hot liquid plastic into a mold, the plastic hardens and then it's sort of set. But the brain is constantly changing. And actually, even right now, your brain is different than it was before you got on this call. So the experiences that we're having are constantly rewiring and wiring in, reinforcing perceptions, patterns, beliefs, etc. And so the top focus of the brain, of course, is survival. And the experiences that we have wire the brain and shape our perceptions and actions in the future. So this is really important, that sometimes the things that we perceive in our current experience might not be what's actually happening. It might be, we might have gotten thrown back into remembering something from the past. And so we are experiencing it from a place of the past and not necessarily from the lived experience of it today. And so we'll talk more about why practices like mindfulness and awareness can help us to bring more awareness to our everyday lives, to be able to ask ourselves those questions like, is the way that we're responding coming from how we're actually meeting the situation today? Or are we over or under responding to it based on something that happened in our past experience? And so another important thing to know is that as sensory information is coming in from the outside world, it's coming in from inside our bodies, it's going up the spinal cord, up the base of the brain, in through the limbic region, the midbrain, up into the prefrontal cortex, right? But if information that's coming in, if any of that is perceived as a threat, it actually, the limbic region, the amygdala, kicks the prefrontal cortex offline. So the thinking part of the brain, we can't access that anymore. And the challenge is that we're often unaware, because we're often unaware of when we get triggered or activated, when we perceive something as a threat, because all of that identification of it happens at the subconscious level. It happens in the lower parts of the brain. So this is why awareness practices and starting to notice where are we in our nervous system can really help us to know, do we need to do some practices that will help to bring this prefrontal cortex, this thinking part of the brain, back online, or what is it that we need? And we'll talk more about that in a minute as well. And so we're just going to do just a couple minutes of a practice called general awareness meditation. And this is a practice where we'll sit for a couple of minutes and we're just going to become aware of sensations. We're going to become aware of emotions. We're going to become aware of thoughts. And again, Sort of one of the things I think is really important to remember when we're doing these practices is that we are not remembering that we're not our physical bodies. We're more than our physical bodies. We are not our thoughts, and we are not our emotions. We are human beings and physical bodies having thoughts and having emotions, but that doesn't mean that's who we are. It's just what we're experiencing. So sometimes that can be helpful when difficult thoughts or emotions come up, to remind ourselves that we are not those things, and to try to become the observer of our thoughts. So noticing the thought or the emotion like a cloud in the sky as we watch it pass. Okay, there it is. And then a new thought comes in. Okay, so we're just gonna watch what's happening for a couple minutes. So just inviting you to get yourself into a comfortable position, whatever that feels like for you in your body, eyes opened or closed, whatever you find most helpful. And not necessarily landing your attention anywhere specific, but just seeing if you can notice when a sensation is felt, when a thought pops in, when an emotion arises. And see if you can imagine yourself almost like you're sitting in a theater, observing these things on stage, or you're lying on some grass, looking up at the clouds, and you're noticing thoughts, sensations, and emotions like clouds that you watch, and then they just gently blow away, and then you notice the next cloud. And you might notice a thought or emotion might be really compelling, and before you know it, you might have hopped on that thought train or be wrapped up with that emotion, and that's okay. As soon as you notice that you've gotten wrapped up in it, in that moment, you have awareness again and the ability to choose. Do you want to bring yourself back to sitting in those theater seats, just observing? Or do you want to stay on that thought train or stay with that emotion? And that is your choice. But the invitation is to see if you can bring it back to just being the observer of thought, of emotion, and of sensations in the body. And then we'll take a slightly deeper inhale, a little longer exhale as we let that meditation practice go for now. All right. So I know we're moving pretty quickly through this content, but I hope it's resonating. So now we're gonna look at emotions, and we're gonna look at the heart. And so emotions, it's been really helpful for me to better understand what emotions are, because for most of my life, I had a pretty adversarial relationship with my emotions, and I didn't understand them. And I was often told I was too emotional and I needed to knock that off and all that sort of stuff. So I had a really difficult relationship with my emotions. But as I've sort of been on this journey over the last 8 years, one of the things that I've learned is that our emotions are first and foremost energy. Like everything in this universe, it's energy. And so this was helpful for me in recognizing, like, after the end of a stressful week or a stressful day or a stressful hour, that's why sometimes I wear my shoulders like earrings, right? That's that tightness in the muscles. That's that holding of the energy of stress in the body. So emotions are energy. Emotions are also chemicals in the body. So the sort of chemical cocktail, so to speak, of an emotion like joy is very different in the body than the chemical cocktail of sadness or anger. It's made up of, different hormones, different neurotransmitters, all of these different pieces. And that's how the body then is able to identify what emotion we're feeling, which connects us to the third piece, which is that emotions often start out as sensations in the body before it ever makes its way up to the prefrontal cortex, where our language center is, for us to be able to articulate what it is we're feeling. So the more we do practices like body scans, it helps us to tune into those emotions and to catch them before we just go into reactionary mode. And I could tell you many, many stories about when this has been really a helpful tool for me, but we'd need another half hour to add all of those pieces in. But then the other piece I wanted to add, and we are going to do a heart-centered meditation in just a few slides. But the slide on the bottom with the coherent state shows it's information from the HeartMath Institute. And so the heart is so much more than just an organ that pumps blood around our body, which in and of itself is a really critical job. But the heart also is constantly sending out and picking up electromagnetic signals that's being sent around us or that's coming from us. Some of the research suggests that our heart is picking up, 5-10 feet outside of the body, information that we can't see, taste, touch, smell, or hear. So the heart actually too has 90% of the communication from the heart to the brain happens from the heart to the brain, and only 10% from the brain to the heart. So the heart is sending the brain a boatload of information. It has, and they actually call the brain the heart like a second brain, like the little brain. It's really an important piece. And when we can regulate the heart, when we can bring it into a coherent state, it helps to bring all of the other systems in our body into a coherent state. So our respiratory system, our immune system, our nervous system, all of those things start to align when we can bring heart coherence in. And you can see this on the bottom. So, on the left-hand side is before the heart coherence technique. And then the middle is the line where they did the quick coherence, and then the sort of coherence in those different areas afterwards. Another resource I'd like to share is Dr. Susan David. She has a great TED Talk. She's a researcher who researches emotions, and she says how we deal with our inner world drives everything. Emotions, as good or bad, positive or negative, is rigid, and rigidity in the face of complexity is toxic. What we need is emotional agility. So we need to move beyond this thinking of emotions as being good or bad, right or wrong, and seeing emotions as part of the human experience. All of them are. Now, what we do with our emotions matters. That can be good or bad. It can be helpful or harmful, but the emotions in and of themselves are not good or bad. They're giving us information that helps us to know how we're experiencing the world and what we might need to do different. And I've really experienced this as learning how to ride the wave, that, difficult emotions come in, hard things happen. Hopefully we're coming on the tail end of the pandemic. It's hard to know, but, the stress of all of that, when we lose loved ones, when there are big changes and shifts that happen, big emotions arise. And so the more we're able to sort of be with what's arising as it's arising, allowing it to move through, then that energy doesn't get stuck in our body. But if we try to repress it or hold it down, then that energy gets stuck in the body, and it can end up causing lots of issues down the road. And a lot of the presentations I do talk about how toxic stress and trauma can lead to all sorts of physical health impacts, everything from heart disease, stroke, cancers, diabetes, etc. So when we don't have the individual or collective tools to help us navigate big emotions, those big emotions that get stuck in our systems can cause lots of problems. And so we're going to do a quick coherence meditation. And again, this comes from the HeartMath Institute. I would really, I would highly recommend that you check out their resources and their website. They have some great information. And so the heart is a place that we're able to sort of generate and expand certain emotional energies. So we can be really intentional with that. So with this, we are going to invite in certain emotions. So I'd invite you to get your body into a comfortable position. If closing your eyes feels good, you can do that. Otherwise, a soft gaze down at whatever's in front, just to minimize visual distractions. And we're going to bring our focus and attention to the heart center. And it might even be helpful for you just to gently place your hand over your heart as you breathe into this place of the body, into the heart center, and out of the heart center. So just taking a couple nice big breaths into the heart center, breathing out of the heart center. And now I would invite you to sort of call in the energy of either the emotions of love or gratitude or joy. And if it's helpful for you, you can think of someone that really evokes that sense of love in you, something that you are incredibly grateful for, or something that brings you a lot of joy. And so as you bring that person, place, thing to mind, see if you can feel that energy in the heart center, that energy of love, of gratitude, or of joy. And then using each breath, each in-breath, to grow that energy even more in your body, so that eventually that energy is radiating out from your heart all the way down to your toes and all the way up to the top of your head, filling your whole body with the energy of love, gratitude, or joy. Taking a few more big breaths, growing that energy in your body. And then when you're ready, bringing yourself back fully, if you had your eyes closed, opening your eyes, excuse me. And one of the things that the HeartMath Institute says is that when we have a big emotional shift from like sadness to joy, or, excitement to grief, or, something like that, over 1,400 biochemicals shift in our body instantly. And the impact of that shift of those chemicals in the body can last for several hours. And so the HeartMath Institute doesn't talk about good emotions and bad emotions, but they do talk about regenerative emotions. So emotions like love, gratitude, and joy that help the body to regenerate, to be healthy and well. And emotions that are non-regenerative, like sadness, frustration, anger. And again, it's not bad to experience those, but when we stay in those states for long periods of time, it really impacts our body in a negative way. And so this last piece is on spirituality. And so this piece around remembering, again, that everything is energy and that we are all connected, we are all interconnected, and that we are part of something so much larger than just ourselves. There's some interesting new science in the physics realm, and I am not a physics expert by any stretch, but it's called quantum physics, and understanding the quantum field and sort of the possibility and potential of different things. And so when we are a sort of aligned mind, body, spirit, we're able to tap into these other energetic fields that really help us to create a sense of well-being and a space of regeneration, a place of visioning for our future and our potential from a place of from an energetic space that's really positive. And so remembering that the energy that we put into something is often the energy that will perpetuate it. And so connecting with our mind, body, spirit can help us to access these different realms. And, you know, spirituality is different than religion. They can absolutely overlap, but one doesn't necessarily mean the other. And so I think that's important too to recognize, is that spirituality is more about recognizing and living from that place of interconnection, deep interconnection, and understanding that, and aligning then our actions with our understanding of that interconnection. So we're going to shift for a little bit and talk about the autonomic nervous system and the two parts of it: the sympathetic nervous system, which is essential for short-term survival. This is our fight or flight response. If a threat is detected and we need to address it so that we don't die or get harmed, this is the part that we need online, firing, and functioning. And then the other part is the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is essential for long-term survival. If we have a hard time shifting into this part of the nervous system, then it's our bodies are running really hot. This fight or flight response takes a lot of energy. And so this parasympathetic, this rest and digest state, is essential for long-term survival to avoid sort of the impacts of toxic stress. So this is a diagram, a visual that is super helpful for me. It's by Dr. Stephen Porges, and it's understanding sort of those different states we might be in our nervous system. So at the bottom, we have the green, where we're in our ventral vagal. With that, we feel a sense of joy, groundedness, curiosity, compassion, etc. And it feels pretty good to be in this state. But when there's something that comes up and we start to get aroused or we get activated, a perceived threat comes in, we start to move into our sympathetic nervous system. So this is our fight or flight response. Flight is a movement away from, where we might experience feelings like panic, fear, anxiety, worry, and concern. Or we might go into a fight response, sort of a movement towards to address it head on. But with this might come emotions like rage, anger, irritation, and frustration. Now, if we cannot run from it, we cannot fight our way out of it, then the next best option for survival is to move into the dorsal vagal, which is the freeze response, where our body starts to collapse and shut down. Endogenous opioids are released, so we start to numb out and dissociate. So that's sort of that highest piece up there. And so as I've been, especially over the last year, understanding how these pieces connect, when I'm feeling not in my ventral vagal, not in the green, I ask myself, where am I? Am I in the red or am I in the blue? Because depending on where I am, I might need a different type of a practice. So if I'm feeling really shut down and really low energy and whatever, doing something more active, like a shaking meditation or a really brisk walk or something like that, that's going to sort of help get your body online, reconnect you with your body, and sort of get your energy up. Whereas in that fight or flight response, your energy is already really high. You're going to want to do something that's going to help to ground you. So maybe sitting outside on the ground once it finally warms up here in Minnesota, doing some breath practices, some slow breath practices, a heart-centered meditation, something like that could be really helpful. So stress and trauma dysregulate the nervous system, which then impacts all of the other systems in our body, our immune system, our digestive system, our cardiovascular system, all of these systems. And so finding the tools that work best for you is what's really important. I'm sharing some practices today, but there are so many different practices out there, and some of them, there is no one right practice for everyone. Our brains are all wired differently because of our experiences. So it's, I sort of see it as a fun opportunity to get curious and try new things and see what works, see what helps you. And another important piece is this like awareness and noticing, because if I'm not aware of or notice when I'm in the red or the blue, then I can't shift out of it. And you might think, well, why wouldn't you notice it? We might not notice it because it might be a state that we're used to being in. And those states that we're used to being in become automatic. They become normal for us, and they don't feel off or weird or whatever. So starting to pay attention to what is our breath doing? What is our heart rate doing? Are my hands cold and clammy? Is my mouth dry like cotton, cotton mouth? Like all of these give me an insight into where I am in my nervous system and practices I can do to shift. So this is just a couple examples of tools that we can use to regulate and organize the brain. Anything with pattern, repetition, rhythm is really, really helpful for regulation and for organizing the brain. And it doesn't matter how old or how young you are, these are really powerful tools. So okay, I know we only have a few minutes left, so I always try to pack too much into these, and I apologize for that. But understanding that we are more than the sum total of our parts. And when we spend too much time in any one of these areas, either up in our head or in the physical body or spiritual or emotional, and we're not also tending to and caring for those other parts of our body, as I mentioned earlier, all of these parts impact one another. And so if we're not caring for these other parts, then it's still going to impact. So for example, I can eat super healthy and I can exercise and I can be running like marathons and just really taking care of my body really, really well. But if I'm not also taking care of my emotions and I'm also not taking care of mental things when they come up, or there's no like mental stimulation, then my physical body is still going to be impacted because the stress of those big emotions is going to impact my physical body. So being able to have practices that help us to balance or to align in each of these areas and balance them brings us optimal health and well-being. And so we'll just close with another quick practice. This is a practice that I learned when I went through the training for Mind Body Medicine. It's called soft belly, and it's super powerful because when we're in fight or flight, our breathing is short and shallow. So if we can bring that breath deep into the diaphragm, into the belly, it activates or stimulates the vagal nerve, which sends the message back up to the brain that we're physically safe. When the brain gets the message we're physically safe, it shuts off the sympathetic nervous system and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So we'll just do a minute or so of this breathing, bringing your focus and attention to the breath, eyes opened or closed. But as you're breathing in through the nose, imagine your belly is like a balloon, that as you breathe in, you're expanding that balloon. And then as you exhale out through the mouth, you're slowly deflating the balloon. Nice, slow, easy breaths. And if it's helpful for you, you can think to yourself, soft as you breathe in and belly as you breathe out, to remind yourself to keep your belly nice and relaxed, to let that air come deep into the diaphragm. Taking one or two more soft belly breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then coming back into this space fully. I just want to share, so these are some references and resources. I will get the PDF to Sarah, who I believe will send it out along with the recording, which I believe will be coming out sometime the beginning of May. If you need a certificate of participation, Rick has the evaluation link in the chat that you can pull that up. And once you complete that, you'll get a certificate of participation. There are just a few webinars that are coming up. A lot of them have passed already, but there are a few in here. I remember I saw one April 22nd. Yeah, today's the 20th. So there's a couple in here, but you can check out our different webinars if you go to extension.umn.edu/courses and events. And it also engage with us on social media. platforms. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see faces if people want to come on camera. And I know we literally only have like a minute or two left, but if anybody has any thoughts, questions, insights, I would love to hear them. Either unmute yourself or pop it in the chat. That would be wonderful.
Susan, the
Yeah.
exact title is not in the evaluation option for today's webinar. Do you have tapping into your nervous system to support recovery? No.
Oh, are you wondering about what the title of today is?
Or what title they should select? Because
is it creating balance in the chaos?
But that's not an option.
Oh, then I don't know, Rick, because I don't set those up.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Why don't we just have them wait?
Yeah. So maybe you just wait on the evaluations. I apologize for that. We will connect with somebody with an extension and get that figured out so that you can complete the correct evaluation and then get a certificate of participation for today. Yeah.
And that'll come in the follow-up email that gets sent to you.
All right. I know that was a lot. I hope that each and every one of you found at least one practice that that you found helpful. And just remember, it's like anything. It's like learning a new language or an instrument or a new sport. The more you practice it, the more automatic it's going to become. The easier it's going to be for you to do it, to use it when you need it. And so even just choosing one practice and practicing it regularly can be a really powerful tool to help shift you into a place of balance and calm. So yeah, miigwech for joining today.